Brett Matthews, everybody.
Hello, everyone. So, my name is Gregory Matthews, and I have a PhD in statistics, which means you have to call me Dr. Gregory Matthews. And I like to tell everyone that because that's the only real reason to do a PhD. It's completely useless otherwise. What I like to do is I like to take the topic of the show, and tonight's theme is memory, and I like to get a data set, and I like to do some analysis, and I like to present it to you. In the middle of all these jokey jokes, I like to do some hard-hitting, real statistical analysis. So tonight's theme is memory. And let me tell you about the data set that I'm going to look at tonight. It's from this paper right here. This paper is called screwing up already. This paper is called Recollection versus Imagination, Exploring Human Memory and Cognition via Neural Language Models. It's by a bunch of authors. They're from Microsoft and the Allen Institute for Intelligence, and who gives a shit. Okay, so this is the data source. And the idea, what they did for this study was they asked people on Amazon Mechanical Turk. They said, tell us a story from a memory. So you get to pick a memory that you want to tell. And then they took that memory and they gave a summary of the memory. Then they took someone else, and as a control, they asked that person to tell an imagined story based on the summary of the actual recalled story. And all this is done with Amazon Mechanical Turk workers. So there's a recalled story, they get a summary, and then the imagined story is based on the summary of the recalled story. Okay? That's the way this data set works. So this is sort of an example from their paper. This is a screenshot, and we have the recalled story up top. Her husband called me and drove me to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. And on the bottom it says, my older brother is getting married to a rich tycoon lady. He will be very happy. I hope he doesn't get too greedy. And I thought that was a funny phrase, a rich tycoon lady? So I Googled rich tycoon lady, and this lady came up. This is an Australian billionaire, Gina Reinhardt, and she reportedly, this is an article, she reportedly wants a portrait of her removed from an exhibition at the National Gallery of Australia. Can you believe this? These billionaires think they can get everything they want. I mean, how bad can the picture be? Oh my God! Okay, I'm on her side, all right. Let's just stare at that for a little bit. Poor Gina. I mean, it's not totally way off, but I mean... What's up, Neil? What's up, Neil? All right. So let's look at a data summary of it. So let's do some real statistics on this. So here's the data set. There's 6,854 stories. About half, for every imagined story, there should be a recalled story. I'm not sure how there are more recalled stories than imagined. And there's also a retold section, but I'm going to completely ignore that. That's where they ask the people who told the stories to retell them. Oh, actually, I read that backwards. There is more recalled stories than imagined. So some of them just didn't get a match. I'm going to focus on the recalled stories tonight. And there's three main parts to each of these. Each record, each story has a main event. There's a summary that's like a one-line thing. A summary is like a few sentences, and then the story is somewhere between like 15 and 25 sentences. I'm going to focus tonight on the main event and the full story because they're the funniest. Okay. So who told these stories? In the recalled and the imagined, it's about a 50-50 split between men and women. There are some people who identified as non-binary and trans in both the recalled and imagined groups. The age groups of these, there was about, here you have a nice little bar plot. Most of the people in the story, most of the people who told the stories were between 25 and 30. We have a few people out at 55. We have some people who were 18. Ages were reported in 5-year increments, so we only have sort of a bin version of age, but it's mostly people who are, I'm gonna call them young people because I'm an old man at this point. See this right here? That's experience. We also have information about how stressful and draining writing the memory was. So after they wrote the memory, they asked how stressful is this on a scale of 1 to 5, called a Likert scale for those of you scoring at home. Most of the stories here, so on the left we have draining, and on the stressful on the right, most of these were 1s and 2s, and there's a few stressful and draining stories that were 5s, and I think that's something we're going to look at. Well, I know it is because I wrote the slides. Here's some other stuff. They have information about how long it took to complete the story, and for the recalled, it was an average of 31 minutes. For imagined, it took a little bit longer. It's about 38 minutes. But there's these stories that were about 3 minutes long. And that seems very odd to me. That if this task takes, on average, almost over a half an hour, what could someone have possibly done in 3 minutes? So, since I am an expert in the field, and I'm a well-renowned, I'm basically famous. So when you're as good as I am at statistics, what you do is when you see something like this, you gotta go check it out. Make sure these things are real, right? That's good exploratory data analysis. So I went and found the stories that were about 3 minutes. So I found the shortest recalled story It was 200 seconds. It took 200 seconds to do this. It was a white male who was age 18. I mean, come on, right? Lazy pieces of shit. The summary of the story is this story, when my dad was still alive, it was the memorable moment for me. I want it to happen again. Oh my God, I shouldn't have made fun of him. We shouldn't have made fun of him. And the main event was happiness with my dad. Oh my God, that's so sad. Let's go read the story together. I know I'm bringing everyone down, but let's go read the story together. According to Marshall, negative emotions associated with production and writing. He just copied an answer from some homework. This is the story he wrote. And he's getting paid for this. He just did this. So he wrote all this like sad stuff, and then he just copied and pasted an answer from some homework. I looked at the shortest retold story. It's the same guy. It took 173 seconds. Same dude. The summary is the stories of my dad was still alive was never moment for me. I wanted to happen again. Main event about my business aspects. He just copied and pasted a lab report. The purpose of the experiment was to find empirical formula of hydrous copper sulfate. He's just trying to get that 10 cents. He's going to try to get that sweet, sweet 10 cents from me. It's not Mechanical Turk. So I think this is absolute garbage. But then I read the last line. He said, I included the trend line and R-squared value in my graph. And I was like, I respect that, bro. I got you. You're good. All right. So those are clearly made-up stories. But and I found a picture of the guy. I found a picture of him, which is weird because the data set's supposed to be anonymized, but that's a real picture of that guy. That's a real picture of that, right, Neil?
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at some actual stories here. I have two examples of an actual story just to get you a feel, give you a taste of what's in this data set. This story is from a 25-year-old woman, and her race was listed as other. The main event was about a conversation with an elderly woman from Estonia. And here's the story. I bumped into an older lady right after going grocery shopping. She was amazed since the store was open on July 4th. She was reminiscing about the past, about her life before technology. After that, the conversation kept branching out. Pretty normal story, right? That's a pretty normal story. Oh, buckle up, baby. She started saying how it all became better after Nazi Germany invaded her country. She said that Hitler made things better for her country. I was shocked that she mentioned how horrific he had been because of the Holocaust. She somewhat agreed, saying that he shouldn't have gotten as far as killing all those Jews, but she still sounded supportive of him. I mean, you have one memory to tell him that's where you're going with this? And you're not going to believe this, but I actually found a picture of both of these women, and there's the woman in the shopping cart, and there's the Estonian woman telling the story. It's crazy that I can find these pictures. This is the real people who wrote the stories. And here I have another story for you. This is from a 55-year-old white man, and the main event is we rekindled our sexual explorations. And the story is my wife and I went to a romantic vacation. My wife and I had sex in the Jamaican waters. We did it as we watched another couple do the same, and they watched us. Here's the story. No, the story's even better than you think. We went to Jamaica. The water was warm, and the colors were gorgeous. We wanted the feeling of being naked in the hot sun and warm water. Spelled S-O-N, by the way. We stripped naked after about 15 minutes. It was so exciting. Okay, all right. Pretty normal start to a sex story. The warm tropical breeze and the hot sun, again spelled S-O-N, aroused us completely. I was almost instantly erect. Here's my favorite detail. I came up from behind my wife and grabbed her breast and started pinching her right nipple. Her right nipple is very sensitive and it's immediately made my wife moan. That's a fantastic detail. The orgasm was one of the most intense we ever had. Neil. You're not going to believe this. I found a picture of these two. I found a picture of them in Jamaica.
Is it the hot sun?
No. Good joke, Neil up here. You're not going to believe this. I found a picture of the two in Jamaica, and there it is. They're rekindling. Notice he's on the left because her right nipple is very sensitive. So that's the better spot for him in case he brushed up against it. Oh, amazing. A note about stop words. So in this analysis, but the next slide is the word of the day is segue. Isn't that crushing segue? Note about stop words. So in this analysis, examples of stop words are like a, and, the, it, or. These are words that occur so often in the English language that when you do natural language processing or you do analysis with words, you often don't count them. So I've removed all the stop words in the following analysis, and I thought that needed to be said immediately after a picture of two old butts. The word of the day is segue. I'm crushing that segue. It's the best segue you'll ever see in your entire lives. So let's look at some results. I took the main event, so every main event is like one sentence, and I wanted to look at what words were used the most often in the main event. What is the most common word used in the main event of Recalled Stories? These are the most used. Family, wedding, trip, birthday, job. Great. That makes total sense. Those are things that we would want to remember. If we break this down by age group, we get birthday. When you're less than 25, when you're a young kid, birthdays mean something. I don't give a shit about birthdays anymore. I'm old. 25 to 30, that's wedding season. I love this picture also. I love that guy. It's wedding season. And then what happens after weddings when you get a little bit older? Family. All right? That's what Google, I Googled family, and that's what Google gave me. What is the most common word used by people who are 50 plus? Does anyone have any guesses? Wrong. The answer's dog. The answer's dog. Do you understand what I'm saying here? The most common word used in the main event for old people is dog. Fantastic word. If we break this down by sex, if you're less than 25, it's birthday, time, and wedding. For men, it's birthday, college experience. Sure, young people, great. For older people, for age 55, for women, it's family, friends, and wedding. That's adorable. For men, it's dog, trip, and wedding. It's the fucking dog. It's all being driven by old men. Old men just want to tell stories about their dogs to Mechanical Turk. That's my hypothesis on this. There were 77 recalled stories in this group. Dog is the most common word. I can't explain it. Okay. So then we had this draining. So I wanted to look at what were the most common words in the main event when stories were listed as draining at 5 out of 5. So the most draining stories. Here's the words in order that were most commonly found in the main event. Death, dog, family loss. Fucking dog is up there again. People are telling draining stories about dogs. And dog is up there, mind you, dog is above cancer and passing. If we do the same thing for stressful, we get death, family, cancer, and can you guess it? It's dog. It's dog again. People are telling stressful stories and draining stories about their dogs. I don't know. What are these draining and stressful stories about dogs? Well, I went and looked one up for you. So here's a stressful dog story about a white woman who was 55 years old. Last month while I was driving on the freeway, I saw a dog on the side of the road. He looked at me and his eyes were very wide. I could see that he was shaking. We were just about to meet when a huge truck rushed by, blaring his horn. Oh, you're not gonna like that. The dog freaked out at the noise and bolted into traffic. He was hit by multiple cars. I've lost them all. Neil, come back to me. I've lost the audience. Oh, there's the audience. It's like, oh, that dog. I think about it every fucking day. That's a little stressful. He got hit by multiple cars. I don't know why I think that's so funny. Okay. So let's look at story. Those are all from the main event. Let's look at story here for a second. These are the most common words used in the full story: time, day, life, family, home. That's very nice. Let's look up the most common word in a story that's never used by the other sex. So these are words that were used by like a man, but were never used by a woman, or used by a woman, but were never used by a man in their stories. So for women, it was mommy, child, and nix. Nix is actually the name of a cat. I looked it up. That was a good question. Yeah, it's the name of a cat. And then for men, it's prance, person, and heats. I don't know what's going on in this data set. This data set's fantastic. That's the #1 word that's used by men that is never used by a woman in this data set in the story. So kind of interesting, but the real stars of the show, the real highlight of this used by one sex but not the other, is white guys. There, look at them. Oh, this is like pictures from my youth, right? I'm a white guy. I don't know if you, okay. So these are white guys. So these are words used by white guys that are never used by anyone else in their stories. These are words that are used by white guys and never used by anyone else in their stories. And so I love this guy. Wife's, festival, sports, Ohio, ability, potential. And there's Prance again. There's Prance. Okay? But Prance, it's crazy, right? But the list just keeps getting more embarrassing. We keep going down this list. We have things like goats, giraffes, and horse. We have Ohio, Michigan, Alaska, Kentucky. I mean, those are pretty white states. Mansion, tax, Excel, and Harvard. Affair, UFO, thugs, and streamers. Pretty embarrassing stuff. I actually looked up the states here: Ohio, Michigan, Alaska, and Kentucky. I thought they were about the state. They're actually about college football and college basketball, right? Well, except for the Alaska one. That's a story about an affair with a moose. There it is, my Alaska moose joke. I'm dead serious about this commitment. Whenever I mention Alaska, there's going to be a moose joke following it. Look at that guy. Told a story about an affair with a moose. It's not real. It's not real. So unsolved questions. The final question we need to answer is, why is Prance being used up there? So Prance, I looked this up. It's only used in one story. It was by a 55-year-old white guy. And this is the story that he told. It's the name of his dog. He just used the word dog, Prince, 17 times. He had a dog named Prince. His dog died. He's very upset about it. And in the summer, and so I felt bad about it. I felt bad for this guy. And then I read the summary of his story. And I don't feel bad for anyone because he did this. So there's the guy. He said, a rescue dog can bring a lot of joy in your life. You'll develop a deep bond that will be with you forever. And then this is where this is too much for me. The loss of that same dog will forever leave you with paw prints on your heart. Fuck that guy. No. That's too much. That's too much. What have we learned today? Old people love dogs. Old Estonian women are too honest. True love is knowing the relative levels of sensitivity to your partner's needs. Let's thank Kwong. He helped me out with some of the text analysis. I'm a tainted moron. Follow the show on Instagram. Have a great night.